Hello and welcome back to the 7th episode of the Couch Crickets. Finally today with me in studio I have my long lost co-host Chris, back from the wilderness. How are you, bro?
I'm back. It's good to be back. Hello everyone. Apologies for being missing in action. I may have been mourning the World Cup results or just having a bit of holiday, but thanks to everyone who filled in my absence. It was really cool listening from the other side of the country. Yeah, it's good to be back. We combined for 3 wicket stumpings
On Tuesday evening
at the Action Cricket.
Oh, it was quite special to have Chris as my keeper when I was floating some leg spin pies in. But fortunately, some of these batsmen thought it was a good idea to come down the track.
Yeah, unfortunately, my pies went the distance. And
I think what were your figures, Chris?
We do not speak of my bowling figures. My batting was more solid than my bowling.
Oh. I think you hit quite a nice Babar Azam-esque cover drive there.
Yeah, the disappointment of Action Cricket when your glorious cover drive goes straight into the net.
Yeah, you can't even hold the pose and admire it for a couple of minutes, couple of seconds. Anyway, let's get into what actually happened this week in the World Cup. What an action-packed not couple of weeks, only 1 week we've had so far.
Yeah, I must say it's been raining in the Cape, and it's been a blessing in disguise because I haven't felt bad at all for just sitting in front of the TV and enjoying all of the cricket that's been on show. There's been some good stuff and there's been some poor stuff. It's been a bit of a roller coaster.
And from where we left it last time, there were some cracker matches. Starting off with New Zealand versus West Indies. West Indies actually coming really close to a victory there with an unbelievable 100 from Carlos Brathwaite. I think New Zealand thought they had it in the bag there and then almost lost it at the end with Trent Boult taking an unbelievable catch on the boundary. For those of you that haven't seen that, you should go check it out.
Yeah, I must say Carlos Brathwaite was the standout performer for the West Indies. But once again, my boy Kane Williamson and Ross Taylor coming to the party with big scores. A bit disappointing that Ross Taylor hasn't been able to score a big score yet in this World Cup, but chipping in. And for once in the World Cup, the Universe boss also making a bit of a score. You'd want him to do it a bit more often, but at least he's come to the party a bit.
So, the next match, unfortunately, South Africa versus Pakistan. It's a bit old by this time, but Pakistan beating South Africa with 49 runs. And not too much to say about that game. Without being too critical, it was a bit expected, Chris?
Yeah, we've looked a bit wounded throughout the World Cup, to be honest. And I didn't predict us putting up a huge... It felt like we were always going to lose this one. Pakistan have it all to play for, and we're sort of on the back foot. Their top three, those dangerous batsmen that they have, really fired, and Haris Sohail came in down the order and made good runs, and he's been really impressive since he got picked. I don't know where he was the first few games.
Yeah, that was his first game for Pakistan, and he came in, and I think we sort of thought once we got Babar Azam and Mohammad Hafiz, we thought, okay, well, we're in business, but it seems like we weren't.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, we don't want to go on about it too much, but again, a lot of batsmen for us getting starts. There's a few 40s, a 50, but no one could go on really. So very disappointing from South Africa's side, but we are dealing with this and moving on.
Just one topic, one person I'd like to talk about quickly is that we've been saying our batsman this and our batsman that, but our strike bowlers have also not been giving us the wickets. If you take a look at what Kagiso Rabada has been doing, it's not that he's been bowling badly, but he's your main strike bowler. If you look at what Mitchell Starc, Trent Boult, Jasprit Bumrah is doing for their respective countries, you expect your lead striker to take wickets. And there's been a lot of speculation that he's still a bit injured or he's overworked from the IPL. But we'll never really know. After our previous episode, I felt a bit bad about us dropping all the blame on our batsmen, and that isn't necessarily the case.
No, I think we struggled a bit to strike up front. I think I've personally felt when I've been watching the game, okay, when are we getting Imran Tahir on to take some wickets? And both, to be fair, Lungi Ngidi and Kagiso Rabada have had 1 or 2 loose balls per over that have just released a little bit of pressure. Rabada often accurate up the top, but not with that fiery, dangerous sort of look that we've come to expect from him. Rabada's got a potent Yorker when he pulls it out. He should actually be bowling right up there with the fastest in the world, whereas currently it looks like his pace is about 5 to 10 kilometers per hour down from where it can be.
But anyway, the Proteas are now officially out of the World Cup, so we're going to start moving on from them. And after that, we saw a game between Bangladesh and Afghanistan. A relative easy victory for Bangladesh, winning by 62 runs. Nothing too out of the ordinary there. One of the games of the World Cup which you can sort of say went according to expectation. Yeah, and then we moved on to one of the most expected games of the World Cup, for me anyway, and that was Australia versus England. And Australia winning quite comfortably by 64 runs in the end. Australia batting first, which is a topic we'll get to now, but Aaron Finch with 100 up top, David Warner with the 50, and once you've got that base, Alex Carey finishing it off, and a quality first inning score by Australia, in the end.
Yes, definitely a quality score, but I'm not sure if you had the opportunity. You see, Cole works, and I've just been watching cricket basically full time. But Australia built this amazing platform. David Warner got out, and in came Khawaja, and then Smith with Finch still in, and he went to his 100, and he was looking great. And it was the ball after his 100 went for a big hook or pull shot and got caught on the boundary, and the innings sort of lost its way. They were definitely on their way to a 300 plus total. And I think on another day, England may have chased down at 285, and Australia would be kicking themselves for falling away a bit. That being said, it was nice for the English bowlers to show a bit of fight back where it could have got really ugly. They sort of pulled it back there.
Yeah, Chris Woakes seemingly being the top bowler at the beginning of the tournament. Everybody was raving about Jafar Archer and Jafar Archer this and Jafar Archer that. That includes me. But and it's not that he's not been bowling well. It's just that Chris Woakes, he just seems to deliver it when they need it the most. Even on days when there might not be that much in the pitch or might not be that much movement through the air, he's been really impressive.
Yeah, not necessarily only in this Australia game, in the India game as well. I just noticed that he seems to be able to execute the game plan that he's set. You know, if he's got a plan for a batsman, he doesn't give that 4-ball away. He seems to be really accurate with a really good repeatable action. He doesn't seem to be overstraining with his action to generate pace, and he's got all sorts of cutters and slow balls and things, and seems to really make a difference both up the top and at the death.
Yeah, he's got some real good skills and a lot of variety. And then during England's batting effort, the left armers of Jason Behrendorff and Mitchell Starc absolutely demolishing the top order of England.
Yeah, apparently a tactic specifically devised to counteract England's batsmen. Apparently they have a statistical weakness against left-arm fast bowling. And one of the reasons Behrendorff came into the team, and if that's the case, clearly true. That being said, the deliveries that got James Vince, Joe Root and Ben Stokes
unbelievable
were great deliveries. The Behrendorff delivery to James Vince was a beautiful in-swinger that if you get to second ball up as he did, you don't feel too bad missing it. Joe Root got almost an identical delivery from Mitchell Starc. And then
I just want to talk, before we get to the Stokes ball, I want to talk about that delivery that Mitchell Starc got Joe Root with. That is not the first time I've seen someone get Joe Root with that left arm over, swinging it back into his pads. Joe Root tends to he likes that sort of flick off his pads. He's very strong. You can, especially when it's a right-hand bowler, because he then works with the angle. But I've seen him multiple times get out with similar things where the left armer swings it back into his pad. So that's just something to watch out for the upcoming Ashes, where Australia is definitely going to throw the ball to Mitchell Starc every time he comes in and say, swing it back into his pads and let's see whether he can resist the temptation to flick it through mid-wicket. So we'll have to see that. And then obviously, sorry for interrupting you, that Ben Stokes delivery.
I mean, Ben Stokes, as you mentioned earlier, has been in sublime form with the bat. He's
I think he's got 550s now.
Yeah, and he's been such a calm influence in that middle order.
Yeah, where the rest of the England's middle order seem to be a bit influenced by nerves and pressure and things.
Yeah, it's gone about his innings in a really smart way, taking his time, then hitting the boundaries, and he looked set to possibly do the job for England, pull a Lance Klusener or whoever. But that ball from Mitchell Starc.
And what makes it almost a bit more special for me is the context of it all, because even though I have a job, I was actually watching this game. The context was that Ben Stokes was really starting to take the game away, and as previously stated, Australia only scored 285, so the total wasn't that big. So he was really starting to pull the game into their own sort of advantage. And then a moment of brilliance from Aaron Finch as a captain, and he said, I'm going to give it to my strike bowler and he's going to get me a wicket. And sort of in that context, from Mitchell Starc's side to deliver such a delivery is absolutely unbelievable. It just shows you he's a real big stage champion.
Yeah, what's very interesting for me is that he could at that stage already extract that sort of swing. I say already because it should have been too late for conventional swing, so it should have been reverse swing.
But too early, basically.
But too early for reverse swing. So very interesting considering the controversial history that they could extract swing at that stage. But we'll put it down to Mitchell Starc's skill as a bowler, not spark controversy. But nevertheless, it produced probably the ball of the World Cup so far, you'd have to say.
And what was really interesting about the rest of the bowling effort from Australia is it seemed that they had set plans for every England batsman. The way they got Jos Buttler with setting that sort of leg side heavy field with the deep square leg and the deep fine leg and giving Stoinis the ball to bowl in some sort of shortish cutters where there isn't so much pace on the ball. It was a clear plan, and I mean Buttler fell for it. So they had that plan. They had the plan for Owen Morgan, which apparently you just have to bowl short to in his innings, because that's worked out 2 or 3 or 4 times this World Cup. I'm not sure. So apparently that's the thing. And they had a plan for Joe Root. So not just the execution, but, well, let's say it rather like this. Not just the planning, but the execution of their plans were quite impressive, in my opinion.
And also just a shout out to Nathan Lyon, Gary.
Oh, Gary!
Also came into the team in place of Adam Zampa, and in my opinion, probably did better.
Yeah.
On a track, it'll be interesting when the tracks start turning a lot. Maybe Zampa will be more effective, but Nathan Lyon able to keep the scoring rate down, even on a track that wasn't turning much, bowling really accurately.
And I thought it was an inspired selection, considering that England have some quality left-arm batsmen. So with the off-spin taking it away, and even though Nathan Lyon doesn't turn the ball that much, his variety in terms of how much overspin he puts on the ball and the amount he flights it, he's a quality bowler. Yes, he might not be the attacking leg spinner taking you 5 wickets, but in some cases, restricting the runs is basically a win. But anyway, I think that's enough about that. I think I'm a bit jealous about how well Australia is sort of marching through this campaign. But on to the next game, which was quite a quality game as well. New Zealand versus Pakistan. Pakistan chasing the 237 set for them by New Zealand, and by doing that, opening up this whole World Cup, basically ensuring that they still have a chance of qualifying for the semi-finals and sort of just making it all a bit more interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Pakistan, like Australia, showing that lots of batsmen seem to have a weakness for the left arm seamer, with Shaheen Afridi and Muhammad Amir And obviously Wabri has the 3 strike bowlers for Pakistan doing great work there. Shaheen Afridi being the main striker in this game. And
there were a lot of wickets down quite early on, and a great recovery by Jimmy Neesham actually, scoring 97 not out. So they gave me some hope that even though if Kane Williamson and Ross Taylor don't make runs, they still have something in the tank. But then in the later game against Australia, which we'll get to, they again lost my faith with that.
Yeah, I think what's worrying for New Zealand is that Guptill and Monroe haven't been firing. They swapped out Monroe for Nichols in the recent game that they played against Australia. That didn't work out either. So I think that's one area of concern. Their openers haven't been scoring runs. Hopefully the slump for Williamson and Taylor won't last too long. But they really need Latham and the openers to chip in a bit with some solid scores.
And it was quite a classy chase from Pakistan's side. I don't know if you watched the game, Chris, but there was quite a lot of turn in the wicket. Mitchell Santner, a left-arm orthodox, was turning it square, and Babar Azam with one of the most classy hundreds I've seen in a long time in a pressure chase. And in the end, they got there. I wouldn't say easily, but relatively without a lot of effort. 4 wickets down with 5 balls remaining. Cool, calm, and collected.
Yeah, definitely. I think it would have been really easy to fall apart at losing an early wicket, 19 for 1, and then they were 44 for 2. It could have gotten scary, but Babar Azam battened down the hatches, stayed there. And then again, Haris Sohail, who missed out on the first few games of their campaign, contributing with a 68. Unfortunate to get run out right near the end, but the job at that point was basically done.
So that basically kept Pakistan's World Cup campaign alive, and we'll get back to them just in a second. The match following that was India versus West Indies, and let's be honest, a fairly easy victory for India there. I don't feel they necessarily had the most convincing batting performance, setting up 268. But the West Indies seamers, on their day, they can be quite good. But in the end, then the Indian bowling attack just blowing away the West Indies and bowling them out for 143. Mohammad Shami with a quality performance, taking up 4 wickets, showing that the injury to Bhuvi is a big concern, but not that a big concern.
Yeah. What's interesting for me is that, as far as this World Cup has gone, India's bowling has by far, for me, been their strong suit. Their batting, they're suffering a little bit, not quite as severely, but a little bit from the South African syndrome, where their batsmen, except for Rohit Sharma, have made 50s, 40s, 60s and gotten out, and not gone on to make those big hundreds, which allow the team to elevate themselves to scores of over 300. Virat Kohli, for instance, lots of 50s, no hundreds in this World Cup so far. MS Dhoni again.
He's saving it for the final.
What has been very impressive in terms of their batting is how Hardik Pandya can accelerate the innings towards the end. He's been very impressive in that regard. But I did expect them to score more runs against the West Indies. But like you said, their bowlers are just too good. Bumrah at the moment for me is by far the best death bowler in the world. You can make an argument for Mitchell Starc, but if I want to defend runs, not necessarily just get wickets, then I'm choosing Bumrah at the moment. In this particular game, his economy was 1.5 off his 6 overs.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
We'll get back to Bumrah just in a minute when we discuss the biggest game of this week, England versus India. Moving on, South Africa played Sri Lanka. In my opinion, a bit of a non-event. We beat them. We bowled them out for 203 and then chased it down with 1 wicket down. Hashim Amla and Faf making some runs. But like they would say in Afrikaans, it's all a bit mosterd na die maal, It's too little too late.
I understand your sentiment. I want to come up for the guys a bit and say that I think we played really well. Dwayne Pretorius bowled really well.
Yeah.
The bowling unit did their job. Finally, we had a semblance of form from Hashim Amla. He seemed to be timing the ball a lot better than in previous innings. That being said, this team looked like a South African team playing in a bilateral series where the pressure's off, and the truth is the pressure is off because we can't make it through. So everyone's going to be saying that we can't deal with pressure, and it's hard to argue with that at this point. But yeah, a nice convincing win, bittersweet, not too much else to say. Very disappointing for Sri Lanka, I think.
Yeah.
They're still having a really good chance at that point of making the semis.
They're actually pretty much beating the West Indies. So if they somehow managed a bit of a better performance and managed to topple us, their playoff chances would be real. But unfortunately for them, they didn't. Yeah,
I mean, they have a mathematical chance of making it, but I don't think they are going to make the semis ahead of England, Pakistan, or Bangladesh at this point.
Yeah, and because their remaining game after this game they're currently playing against the West Indies is against India, who they probably won't beat.
Yeah.
Anyway, on to, in my opinion, most possibly one of the, if not the most exciting games of the World Cup so far, Pakistan versus Afghanistan. You would not expect that to have been so exciting. So, for those of you that might have missed it, because I know a lot of people didn't watch it because they thought it was going to be a no event, Afghanistan set a total of 227 for 9, which was fair. We've come to expect that that's sort of what Afghanistan's batting lineup is going to produce generally. They sort of have guys who can scrap 30, 40 odd together, and they're going to get something around 227. And Pakistan actually almost making a hash of it.
Yeah, I must say, right towards the end there. So again, I'm not sure if you actually watched this game.
I did watch this game. It was on a weekend.
So I mean, I'm paraphrasing figures here, but Pakistan needed something like 40 off the last 3 or 4 overs.
And I think it's 40 of the last 3 or something like that.
And the spinners were doing a great job.
Yeah, Rashid Khan and Mujib.
But
they had one extra over, and then the captain brought on himself. You know.
The captain brought himself on and went for, I think, 18 in that over.
That's the one thing, but the commentators also criticized them a lot, but you've got to ask yourself, I don't know the Afghanistan team that well, so I don't know whether they had another spinner. But someone had to bowl those overs because Rashid Khan and Mujib were going to bowl out anyway. So I think he wanted to back his spinners towards the end where he thought it's going to be close. But I don't think when he brought himself on, he thought he was going to go for 18. And then in the final over, when they needed 6 from 6 or something, it didn't look like it was difficult at all for Imad Wasim to smash him through the covers.
No, but to be fair, following his terrible over, he effected a great run out by tearing in off the boundary, one-handed pickup and a beautiful throw.
Yeah.
So you've got to take the good and the bad. Unfortunately, that over didn't go his way. If they'd have mistimed one of those and been caught on the boundary, we would be singing his praises. So,
but also, I think this is a learning curve for Afghanistan, and sort of for them experiencing this type of pressure and pushing a quality team on a big stage so close. That's going to be major for them, and I'm excited to see what they're going to do over the next 4 years, because it seems like they're in an upward trajectory. So we'll see them probably again in 4 years, and hopefully between these World Cups they get more experience of playing bilateral series against non-Asian teams, because it was something that was mentioned by the commentators. Afghanistan seems to be a lot more confident against these Asian teams. I'm talking Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, because they play them more often, so they know the players. But the moment you put them against, a Mitchell Starc, which they never see except for at the World Cup, then that tends to overwhelm them a bit. But we'll see. Excited for the future.
Yeah, it would have been really nice for Afghanistan to win. That being said, in terms of the World Cup, having Pakistan take this one in the end keeps their semi-final dreams alive, which I think is a positive overall for the World Cup.
Then we moved on to Australia versus New Zealand, and Australia winning by 86 runs. Once again, a in my opinion, a very good performance from Australia. I'm starting to sound like an Australian fanboy here.
I was so disappointed in my B team. New Zealand, I thought, would really put up a fight here, being a really big game for them, and sort of falling apart, really falling apart with a bat. I thought they bowled pretty decently.
They had them like 90 for 5 or something.
We had, 92 for 5.
But what was super interesting for me was that the pitch seemed to be a bit difficult, a bit slow paced, and people were struggling to time it well. And then Alex Carey came in, and it looked like he was batting on a different pitch. He was scoring a run, a ball, cracking it through the covers, having no problem. I had flashbacks of, that previous Test series South Africa played against Australia, and that infamous Test series. where the batsmen would be struggling and South Africa were down in the dumps, and a certain Mr. A.B. de Villiers would walk in and he'd smash 100 at a run a ball, and he'd make everyone look like absolute fools. It was sort of the same vibe here. I don't know why Carey looked like that, but he looked amazing.
Well, we've said before, Carey picked more for his batting than for his keeping abilities. It's good that he's scoring runs, because Matthew Wade's apparently been hitting 100 after 100 for Australia A. So Alex Carey's
performance... At this point, I'm starting to feel they can drop Maxwell and play Wade just as a batsman. But just to make your point about taking pace off the ball on this pitch, Kane Williamson bowled 7 overs.
7 overs, going only at 3.5 and took a wicket. So definitely the slower bowlers looked like they did all right on this pitch. But Trent Boult, my man, taking 4 wickets again. So
it seemed to have, the slow bowling seemed to help a lot with restricting runs, but the wickets were taken by mostly the pace bowlers. So just on that note, Lockie Ferguson seemingly being actually quite a big deal. I don't know if you've seen him been bowling these last couple of games.
Yeah,
but he's really fast and he bowls well. I praised Australia for executing plans, but did you see the catch that Guptill took to get rid of Steve Smith, and the carefully sort of planned plan for Smith? They literally put a little short fine leg there and bowled him a bumper and got him there. Perhaps not in the way they thought they would. Perhaps more a bit of a top edge or a brush off the glove or whatever, but executed quite well to get rid of the best batsman in the world.
I've really enjoyed watching Lockie Ferguson. He's got a bit of an awkward looking action.
He falls away a lot. But still generates huge pace. He's not unlike Mark Wood with his falling away action vibe. But seems to get really steep bounce. And he doesn't look particularly tall, but when he bowls a bumper, it seems to really make a lot of people uncomfortable. Probably just because he's fast, but also it just looks like he gets steep bounce. And Trent Boult with a hat-trick at the end of the innings. How cool was that?
With, again, a left armer swinging it in, bowling Yorkers.
Yeah, basically that's the silver bullet.
But again, my boys, New Zealand's batting falling away at the top. Williamson and Taylor with 40s and 30s, and then a bit of a disaster. That being said,
that shot from Kane Williamson to get out was a bit lazier. He sort of tried to play it down to third man and then just basically glided it through to the keeper. It was a bit lazy, maybe a bit sort of too paced off the pitch. I don't know. I don't want to criticize him too much. He's an unbelievable batsman. But that sort of, in my opinion, was the turning point of the game. Yeah. After that. And did you see how they bought Colin de Grandome's wicket? No. So this was quite impressive. So Colin de Grandome comes in, and we all know, especially as South Africans, we know what he can do with the bat, especially when you bowl on his legs, because that's where he smashed us all over. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to stop being sour about that. Anyway, so what Finch did was a bit of inspired captaincy. I don't know whether Justin Langer or Panne maybe threw the tactic onto the field. But they gave Stephen Smith, who hasn't bowled in I don't know how many years, they gave him the ball, and on his first ball, he literally floated him a leg spin pie outside of off stump, and he smashed it straight to long off.
If only that had worked for me when we were playing action cricket this week. My pies got destroyed.
But anyway, floated him a pie and got him first ball. It was comical to see such an obvious plan work so well.
Yeah, I must say, seeing Stephen Smith bowl these days is almost the same as when we saw Graham Smith bowl.
Stephen Smith bowls better than that. Sorry, Smithy. Graham Smith now. Anyway, so in the end, Australia ending up with quite a convincing victory. New Zealand not actually getting close, all out for 157.
Yeah, and after such a convincing start to their campaign, now with 2 losses, one of them quite bad. It's just a bit worrying. Where I thought they would compete with the top teams, I'm now a bit more worried that they are probably the 4th team on the semis, if the teams play to their potential.
And then let's move on to, before we start to discuss how the top 4 is shaping out and what's going on, England versus India yesterday. That, for me, was a very interesting game.
Yeah, so just to start out, it was amazing the difference that having Jason Roy at the top of the innings made to the whole day, almost. It made such a difference to Johnny Bairstow. It felt like he could play more within himself initially and not feel scoreboard pressure because Jason Roy goes at such a rapid rate. It felt like there was a better understanding with their running between the wickets. They're both so aggressive with that, and it just felt like England had the solid platform from the beginning.
And India pulling a bit of a pro-tier vibe there, not referring that decision against Jason Roy would have been gone for, I think, 20 or 30.
Yeah, that's...
But that's unfortunate. I mean, they did appeal. The umpire said not out, and it was sort of a fine brush down leg of his glove, so you can forgive them. But anyway, moving on. They had a massive opening stand. Johnny Bairstow scoring 111, Joe Root scoring 44, and then Ben Stokes doing the business once again. On that note, Owen Morgan getting bounced out again.
I was really worried that England were going to fall away in the same way that Australia fell away against them. A great opening stand. Joe Root came in but can't, at this point it seems, play the shots that Roy plays. So he was basically giving Bairstow the strike. And when Bairstow got out, and then quickly after that Morgan, I thought, oh, here we go. They're going to get 280 where they really need 340.
But then came in Ben Stokes.
But Ben Stokes, again, just summed up the situation, hit the boundaries when they needed to happen. Joss Butler, it'll look like he only scored 20, but it's off 8 balls. He did his thing. So, yeah, good work by him.
So, what was really interesting for me is the way that Virat Kohli, and I suppose his whole brains trust in the team, used their bowlers. To be honest, the surface wasn't one which offered any amount of assistance for the spinners. And I couldn't quite understand why they kept going with Kuldeep in the middle there when he was getting smashed. I know you know you're going to say, okay, who are you going to bowl? But at that stage, I feel they could have sort of switched it up a bit. Someone can bowl some dibbly-dobblies and try something, but they were literally going at 10 and over. Kuldeep actually rescued it a bit towards the end when he got a wicket, basically bought a wicket. But I just feel like tactically there was something amiss. And then using Shami to bowl those last 2 overs at the death. I mean, Bumrah was from the one side bowling unbelievable. He was going at 4, 5 and over in the death against Ben Stokes and set batsmen. Unbelievable. At the other end, Shami was going at 15s. Yeah, we've seen this. Why not, structure it differently to let... You've only got 3 seamers, so why not structure it differently to let maybe Hardik Pandya bowl some of the death overs? Because he bowls a relatively good Yorker. He bowls it with a lot of change of pace. And I mean, Mohamed Shami has now travelled in basically all the games where they have bowled against a set batting team in the end overs. Yes, he picked up 5 wickets in the end, but without being harsh, he bought those wickets.
So I want to come up for him a bit. He got Joe Root out. He got Johnny Bairstow out. So some of those wickets, not such rubbish.
He got Morgan out as well.
He got Morgan out as well.
I'm harsh. Okay, he didn't buy the wickets.
But I agree with you. He's not a great option at the death.
Because, sorry, you know what? Did you see his stats before 8 overs? I think by 8 overs he was going at like 2, 3 and over, and he ended up with going at 7. Is that what you were going to say?
No. I don't think he's great at the death. I just don't think Hardik Pandya is much better.
Okay, fair enough.
They can definitely try him, because Shami I don't think is the answer at the death. It's the risk you run now with playing two frontline spinners. Other days we praise the spinners take wickets, great. And on this particular day, it felt like it was backfiring a bit. One of the comments I heard was that Chahal's so used to being an all-out attack bowler, he's a wicket taker, that he doesn't seem to have okay, it's not turning, I'm getting blicksomed, now I'm going to bowl a bit flatter or something just to stop the bleeding, basically. But didn't really seem to have that.
He travelled, yeah. It was his most expensive ODI spell ever.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, it's the most expensive spell by an Indian bowler in a World Cup.
But so I don't want to say tactically, it felt a bit tactically inept, but it did feel a bit tactically inept from India's bowling perspective.
Look, when the opening stand is 160, then your tactics are going to look poor.
Yeah,
and things could have been very different if they had got that Roy wicket. So we can say that tactically it wasn't great, but these bowlers have done the job up to now. And like you say, Bumrah is the real deal at the death. You can't bank on getting 10 and over off Bumrah. You've got to score off Shami or the other one, whoever it is. But India's batting, very controversial. Losing Rahul early and off the power play, they only scored 27 runs.
That was a bit strange, eh?
Yeah, they didn't seem too rushed, which to a certain extent I am very pro taking your time getting set. But then you can't get out. Rohit Sharma, he was, if you look at his innings at the end, it's got a strike rate of 93 with his 102 of 109. But a few overs before that, his strike rate was probably down in the 60s because he caught that up over the space of 2-3 overs. And for him to get out at that stage was actually sort of criminal. You look at it and you say he's the hero of the innings, but he should never have gotten out at that stage.
But also, I mean, everybody knows I love my boy Virat. But once again, 66 of 76 and out. You either need to get to that 66 a lot faster, or you can't get out. That's the two options. We earlier in this podcast, well, not today, but in previous episodes, we've discussed the whole David Warner thing, going slow. You either go at a rapid tempo and you get the job done quickly and then get out, or you have to sort of not get out.
So something I've been thinking about. So England, their openers can afford to go for it hell for leather. If Roy or Bairstow get out, in comes Root, consolidates the innings. They know they've got Stokes down the order, they've got Butler down the order, they either have Moeen Ali or someone else down the order, they've got enough batting. Whereas for India, I think they've got a bit of a case where they know if the opposition get through Sharma and Kohli, they're a little bit exposed. And I think that's causing them to be more cautious than they actually need to be, because I think their middle-lower order we've seen, they can bat. Dhoni, Pandya are relatively in form, so I think they can afford to take a few more chances at the top.
Definitely. One thing, while I was criticizing their bowling effort, one thing to mention is that Plunkett got basically the three of the main wickets. He got Kohli, Pant and Pandya. And as we know, Liam Plunkett is like a medium pacer, but his specialty is basically the middle overs. taking the pace of the ball, etc., things like that. So I wonder whether that wasn't actually where India was lacking. They didn't have someone who's sort of in South Africa's case, Antile Petlekwayo, in England's case, Liam Plunkett type of figure, to just sort of control the middle overs when there's not something on offer for the spinners.
I agree with you totally. And if you look at this game, Wokes and Archer bowled this extremely well up front.
Mm-hmm.
But when both of them came back later, they barely bowled a full-pace ball. It was all cutters into the pitch. And the person who travelled the most was Mark Wood, who probably bowled the least cutters. Plunkett, Archer, Wokes bowled a huge percentage of these cutters into the pitch. And what was really impressive for me is how they set a field. They picked out, especially Hardik Pandya, they picked out his hitting areas, and they set the field out on the boundary, bowled these slow balls, no pace on it, made sure that he was hitting towards the long end of the boundary, and all he could get most of the time was singles. So they also had a plan for minimizing the damage that the batsman could do, forcing them to try and hit sixes, and it looked like they tactically were really good.
Yeah, so in the end, India losing by 31 runs. So it's actually quite close, but I think it wasn't as close as 31 runs would make it seem. But as I said to you earlier, Chris, it just felt like India didn't quite pitch for the day. I don't know. I didn't. The tactics were, but not there in my opinion. The fire wasn't. It just felt like England wanted and needed to win more, which they do because they need to win. They needed to win the game against India, and they need to win the next game against New Zealand to ensure that they are in the semi-finals.
Yeah, definitely. I think England would have turned up for the game with all the motivation in the world. I think if you watched how Johnny Bairstow went about his business, and once he got to his 100, you could see what it meant to him in terms of criticism that England have received and how he reacted to that. For those who don't follow the media, that Johnny Bairstow actually made quite a abrasive statement saying that English fans and some of the ex-players have,
specifically Michael Vaughan,
have got an attitude where they're almost waiting for the team to fail so that they can criticize the team. And he said that it's basically saying that that's a very poor way to support the team, and they should be egging them on instead of waiting for them to fail. And with such an outspoken statement, it would have been terrible for him to not perform. But having come out and scored 100 in a winning cause, he sort of backed up his statements there, and you could see that they come out with a lot of fire. And whereas the Indian team, all the talk is about how little intent they showed both up front and in the last 10 or so overs. So I wouldn't say India didn't want it, but it didn't look like they were going all out for it. That being said, it's not the end of the road for India by a long shot.
So before we end off this episode, because we've been going at it for a while now, let's just take a quick look at what's happening in the log. So Australia up top, 7 out of 8 wins, 14 points, qualified, done.
Looking dangerous.
Looking money, bro. I'm
please
so
not
jealous.
another one. They can't win a 6th one. I'm done.
Anyway, okay. So India in second place at this stage, 5 of 7. They still have got 2 games left, one against Bangladesh and the other one against Sri Lanka. So they just need to win one of those games and they're through. And I'm pretty safe to say they'll win one of those at least, if not most likely both.
We expect them to win both.
So India and Australia through. Okay. Now let's talk about New Zealand. New Zealand, even though they're on 11 points, I think they're safe. Because let's say Pakistan win their next game. Pakistan's on 11 points and they're on 5 wins, which is the same amount of wins than New Zealand. Just by the way, wins, if a team is equal on points, they first take a look at the amount of wins and then they move on to net run rate to determine who goes through. So even if Pakistan win their next one, they're on 11 points and 5 wins, same amount as New Zealand. If New Zealand lose their next one, which is against England, so that is a possibility. New Zealand's net run rate is a lot better than Pakistan's, so New Zealand will have to get absolutely smashed by by England, and Pakistan will need to beat Bangladesh quite convincingly, which is a possibility. Never say never, especially if England smash New Zealand by scoring something massive 350 up and bowling them out for cheaply like Australia did. So New Zealand potentially in trouble, but not in that much trouble yet.
I don't think so. I see the game against England being competitive. I think England should win, but I don't see New Zealand being destroyed.
And that should save New Zealand then on net run rate, essentially. Yeah. Also because the team which could potentially catch them, Pakistan, will most likely, even if they do beat Bangladesh, they will most likely not thrash them. So Pakistan's net run rate won't increase by that much. So let's then say Australia and India definitely safe, New Zealand most likely safe. Then the fourth spot, England. They're currently on 10 points. If they defeat New Zealand, they are through.
Game over.
Game over. You've got your top 4.
Great.
If they do not beat New Zealand and Pakistan somehow manage to beat Bangladesh, then Pakistan will go through as the 4th team. But even if England and New Zealand's game just rains out, that gives England 1 point and they have a much superior net run rate and the same amount of wins than Pakistan. So it's basically all down to the England-New Zealand game, which is who is going to secure the top 4. And I really think England should win that one.
Yeah, I think it depends on which English team turns up. We've seen the new England, inverted commas, meaning the England that's been playing for the last 4 years and chasing down 350 and 360 with ease. If they turn up, they're too strong for New Zealand. If the team that got, quite honestly, spanked by Australia turns up, Trent Bolt comes out and swings it into their pads and gets Joe Root early and then it's going to be soul-destroying for England. But
I think they should make it.
I think they are praying that Pakistan-Bangladesh rains out.
Or just England-New Zealand rains out.
Yeah.
If their own game rains out, they go through as well.
They're praying for some rain or for Bangladesh to do something magic, although not too magic because they can still get up to 11 points. But
yeah, I mean, that's the other... So, sorry, we didn't mention it, but Bangladesh could potentially also get to 11 points by beating Pakistan and India, but I feel that's a bit unlikely.
That would be an exceptional performance by Bangladesh. But yeah, England's still in charge of their own destiny.
Yeah, and
they have the potential to beat New Zealand. I feel they've got it all to play for. They'll go in there and do the business. I hope for their sake that they can do it. We've spoken about this off mic, but I'm really backing New Zealand and England just because they haven't won a World Cup yet.
I really don't like England. I'd rather have Australia or India, preferably India, win than flipping England and New Zealand. I can't forgive New Zealand for what they've been doing to the Proteas in World Cups, and I don't like the English.
To counter that, the Proteas have been doing it all to themselves. It's not New Zealand's fault that we can't beat them. It's England, I feel like their sport just needs something. I know they had Liverpool win the Champions League recently, which is sort of like England winning, but come on, give this poor English team something. I like them.
They don't deserve it.
They do. They've got a champion team. They play brave cricket.
Brave cricket.
I like it.
Anyway, I think that's it for this week. So this has been a long one, but I think we've covered some good stuff. We're heading into the final phases of the World Cup. So that's pretty exciting. And I think by our next episode, we'll know who is in the semi-finals, who's playing who. And I think we're going to release a bit of a special feature, like a preview for the semi-finals and finals. We'll still sort that out. But once again, thank you very much for joining us on the couch.
Yeah, head over to our social media things if you haven't already. Like, subscribe, share, follow. And we hope you enjoyed this episode.
Cheers. Bye-bye.